Good evening, everyone. I'm Mike Monsos, Director of the School of Theater and Dance, and thank you for coming. We welcome you to this service honoring and remembering Bill Raoul, our friend, teacher, colleague, artist, and raconteur. Now, as this is an event that is designed to honor Bill, it would probably be most appropriate to open with a few crass and vulgar jokes. And then, of course, followed up by spending a few minutes mocking all the people in the front row. But Bill isn't here. And as Dale pointed out, he would more than likely refuse to come anyway. So I will spare you the vulgarities. Besides, I wouldn't be able to pull it off as well as Bill did. Very few people could. Now, because Bill would certainly prefer skipping this part and getting right to the food and drink that we have waiting for us, I have made a promise to his memory that our speakers tonight will try to be brief. They're allowed to be irreverent, but long-winded, no. They can be sarcastic, hopefully. Verbose, no. Rude, profane, blasphemous, flippant, funny, sure. With Bill, anything was possible. Even last week. The news surprised a lot of us. I received a lot of calls, texts, and posts expressing the shock that Bill could be gone. He was such a powerful influence on so many of us, the idea that his caustic wit and unparalleled sarcasm would somehow be silenced was a little hard to believe. Bill's health was failing, sure. He had trouble getting out of my pickup truck, but who doesn't really? I mean, God, it's the size of a DC-10, really. But he was Bill. I mean, bigger than life. Always sharp, always with a quick wit, always a sharp jab, always there. In so many ways. So it's hard for me to fathom a world without him. I still expect him to pop in from around the corner and in that unbelievably loud voice proclaim something incredibly rude, which I, of course, would find hysterically funny, even if nobody else did. We had a similar sense of humor. We would banter puns back and forth like a tennis match. I would desperately try to match wits with him on any subject, but rarely could I best him. He was just that good at everything. His designs were beautiful and seemed effortless. His ideas and intellect appeared endless. His knowledge of theater, music, and the arts was vast, and his humor knew no boundaries. You see, I learned very early in my career that I would never be as smart or as witty or as talented as Bill. But that's okay, because I also realized that I am smarter, wittier, and more talented because of Bill. All right. Let's get this thing started. I would like first to invite my friend and colleague, Greg Johnson, Artistic Director of the Montana Rep, up to the podium. Take it away.
Thank you. A lesbian, a born-again Christian, and a transvestite walk into a bar. And if you know the rest of that joke, you know Bill Raoul. First of all, I want to thank Dale. Where are you? There you are. For asking me to speak. And Dale and Ray, thank you for organizing this. And Mike, I'm honored to be speaking here. Three quick things, because we do want to be brief and get on to the festivities. And I don't come to bury Bill, I come to praise him. Three things. One is a professional thing, one is a political thing, and one is a people thing. First of all, we had a show called Stones in His Pockets. We were doing it at the Crystal Theater, and we had no money. And Bill was doing it pro bono because he loved to design on the cuff, and he loved to design for the Rep, and he loved to design when there was no budget and a problem. And so it's a play, it's a two-character play. They play many roles. And he came in, he had gone to Goodwill, and he came in one afternoon with hangers and I'd say 40 shirts. And he hung them in the back of the Crystal Theater, and Bobby Gutierrez, David Mills-Lowe, and Howard Kingston, who were all part of the company, sat there and went, oh my God. He had hung all the shirts, all different kinds of shirts, Western shirts, work shirts, dress shirts, in the back. It was the square that the audience looked at. And I said to myself, this is pure genius. No money. What did it cost? $1 shirt, $30. And we had an absolutely stunning set that said everything you needed to know about that play. That, in my mind, great design. Second thing I want to mention, yes, sure, go ahead. Second thing I want to mention is that he was a proud member of IATSE, the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees, and the part of that title that applies most to Bill is theatrical. It was Local 339. He was proud to be a part of the labor movement. He believed in labor. He believed in the working man, and he believed that the union movement was very important in this country and still is, and he would bug me to do The Cradle Will Rock by Mark Blitzstein, which we haven't yet done, Bill, but we will. And every time we got together, he would bring it up. It's a wonderful play. It's from the National Federal Project during the Depression, and it was John Houseman and Orson Welles. And he wanted us to do it, and I think perhaps someday we should. And so maybe it's a reason why he thought of, because the love for the working man, that he saw theater as a craft rather than an art. And we argued about that a lot, but I think his argument has a lot of merit. And the last thing I want to say is that the people part is that friendship. He was a great friend. And if you were lucky enough to be Bill's friend, it was for a long, long time, and it was very deep, and it was very abiding and loyal. You'll probably hear a lot about loyalty tonight because he was a very loyal friend. And he didn't sweat the small stuff. He hated pretense. And he was generous and loyal. And he had a mind that envy could not but call fair. Thank you, Bill.
Next up, the director of the UM Broadcast Media Center, William Marcus.
I brought mine to visit. I hear they get lonely. And you can tell who's top dog tonight. Yeah, Bill probably would not have enjoyed this event, but he would have loved not having to come to it. In my experience, Bill was pretty unsentimental about death. He would always say, so-and-so called. Frank Sinatra called. Larry Olivier called. And I always say, what do you mean called? To say goodbye. Well, Bill called, and he had a pretty big phone book. I got to know Bill in the early 80s, got to know him well when I worked Sunday mornings at KUFM, and he would come by to record his radio show. He was doing a program of music of stage and screen. He would always bring me pastries from the Queen of Tarts, or a piece of chess pie that he'd made, and I would say, chess pie? And he'd go, chess pie. And then he'd go into the studio and we'd cut his tracks.
Oh, the shark, babe, has such teeth, dear, and it shows them pearly white.
Bobby Darin's recording of Mac the Knife reached the #1 spot on the pop charts late in 1959. It was one of 17 versions recorded that year, including the one by Louis Armstrong. It seemed Kurt Weill was America's most popular composer, but he had died almost 10 years earlier, and for all practical purposes was a forgotten man. For the next 9 weeks, in a centennial celebration of his birth, we will listen to his progress from a teenage writer of songs in Germany during World War I to his final compositions, again songs written just before he died in New York City during the Cold War.
Bill had a great voice for radio. It was warm and engaging and informed. That Kurt Weill piece was from a series he did on the centenary of Weill's birth in 2000. But he also did the stage and screen programs, the history of Mozart's music, and with Jam, the Strictly Schubert series for us. He did opera showcases. Of course, this was partly his love for sharing and love for radio, but it was also just another reason he could tell his accountant that, yes, he should write all that music off his taxes. When he was off script, he took us right to the broadcast edge of risque. Mostly during Opera Buffo, which occurred during our fundraiser. Terry Conrad and another brave soul would join Bill on the air. He raised a lot of money. And the program still makes good money, but without Bill, it's now just called Opera Buffet. Bill gave us hours and hours of great radio and years of wonderful friendship, and I always considered myself fortunate to be one of those who would take his call. Goodbye, Bill.
Next up, Jan Helms. Sorry. You said?
I thought it was Casey.
Oh, I'm sorry. It is Casey. I can't read very well. One of the things Bill forgot to teach me, apparently. Hi, Casey. You're up next. Senior Vice President, current programming at Magical Elves Incorporated.
Emmy winner.
I'm not good at public speaking, so I must really love Bill if I'm willing to do this. Anyways, the Bill Raoul my family and I knew was a very different Bill Raoul. Besides all of the humor and the crassness, there was a real heart in that man. Bill was the man that drug an antique baby high chair across the country during the Montana Rep Tour in 1970. He would instruct the crew of students to carefully unload it off the truck in each city so it wouldn't get damaged, and then carefully load it back on until he was able to deliver the gift to my parents in Utah. Bill was the man who taught me and my sisters to bake. He would have us over to his house for Saturday outings. We would make his special chocolate chip cookies, his pies, and all the while listening to musicals. Bill was the man who showed up every Christmas with a stack of gifts, a sea of gray wrapping paper. My favorite was the year we all received matching knitted gray and pink mouse slippers. Bill taught us how to sew in the costume shop during the summers. He also put us to work painting the scene shop so my parents could have a moment of peace. Bill gave my sisters and I an endless supply of Wrigley double mint gum. He never knew that we used to sneak it out of his white Toyota truck. Bill was the man who taught me theater history right here on this stage. And Bill was the man who, when my father passed, he came by our house to give his condolences. He made it clear to my sister Colleen that he would not be attending the eulogy. He just didn't do those things. My sister said she understood, but that there was one little thing that would make her feel a little bit better. And it was if he would make a batch of his amazing chocolate chip cookies. He smiled and went on his way. And about an hour later, he showed up, cookies in hand. Passionate, creative, funny, incredible work ethic, an inspiration to me. He was an amazing man, but I think the thing that I love the most about Bill and my family is he really did have a huge heart.
How about now? Okay.
You tricked me.
I did. I'm so sorry.
I'm just going to say a few words because, of course, what I'm going to do is play. And I was thankful. Dale asked me to play Schubert, and as you all know, he loved music, but I have to say Schubert was certainly in the top three, if not his favorite composer. I knew right away I was going to go to the dances. Over 400, don't worry, I'm just going to play a couple hundred. Dances that are very short, but just such keen character pieces. So as I began to play and search for pieces, it occurred to me, oh, here's Bill when he's so sweet, and here's Bill when he's just being such a goofball. And So I thought, well, that's what I'll just cobble together a group of pieces that paints a portrait of the Bill that I knew, and many of you, all of you probably, but in sound. So you've heard a lot of descriptive adjectives. What comes to mind? You don't have to get the same thing I got out of the pieces, of course. The beauty of listening to music is you hear what you hear. But some of my encounters with Bill, I was probably scared to death of him for the first 15 years I was hanging out with him because he was so blustery and so brash and so bellicose. Then there was the sweet and sentimental. He could be very sentimental. Goofball, silly, filthy mouth, warm, generous, gracious host, aggravatingly, irritatingly cranky, very gracious, very warm, fun-loving. And in the last few years, maybe it was always there, I saw a solitary person and a bit of a, I thought, lonely person. And I hope I don't cry when I play, because there'll be fog on my glasses.
Next up, I'd like to invite Marilyn Bruya, Professor Emeritus of the School of Art of the University of Montana. It's all yours.
One could be very sentimental here with all these stories about Bill. He was such a good friend, as you've described with the chocolate chip cookies. He was a great friend to my kids as well. First time he met them, he said, "You'd better behave or you'll end up in the trash compactor." And they said, "Oh, yeah?" They loved him immediately, and he was like a great uncle. He was also a great trickster. And before there was Costco, before there was the Good Food Store, there was the Safeway, the old Safeway store in West Broadway. Some of you may remember. Some remember Bill at that store, and I recall hearing about an event there where the president's secretary was shopping, and she had left her grocery cart and walked around the aisle to get to some other place. And Bill noticed that she had inadvertently left her cart by the feminine hygiene products, and he proceeded to empty the shelf. And there was the story about him chasing Elizabeth Kester around with a zucchini in the same store. It was Bill, you know, it was okay. It was Bill. And it was fun to try to play tricks on him, but somehow he always got the better answer. Another time, I made a terrible mistake. I had a difficulty with a recipe. It was back in the day when our salaries were very low, and I was looking for a really, really great, cheap Christmas present for people, and I had found a recipe for Bailey's Irish Cream. And this recipe had something I didn't understand. It required eggs with uncracked shells. What? That's what I said. It's like, what would this be? And I didn't want to ask anybody. And I thought about it for about a week. And then I threw the eggs with the uncracked shells in the blender with everything else. I blended them for a couple days. And then I strained them through cheesecloth. And the biggest mistake I made was telling Bill about it. A year went by. It was the next holiday season, and I was sleeping in as usual on a weekend morning, and my daughters came running in. "Mom, we can't get out the front door. There's egg cartons out there. They're higher than the door. They're all wrapped with silver ribbon, and they have eggshells in them." You know how Bill cooked with a pound of butter and a dozen eggs and just about everything, and all those were on the front porch. So I said, well, what can we make for Bill out of all of this? And we went to the store and bought the cheapest cake mixes we could find, about 10 of them. And we put all the eggshells like this in the baking pans, and we made a whole egg cake. And we tied it with silver ribbon. I think it was about 10 layers, something. So that was one of our little adventures with Bill. Another one that I'd like to tell, because I saw the lady involved with this, who may or may not want to be identified. She was at U.S. Bank down there at the courthouse before it was the district courthouse. She was busy getting money out of the machine there, and somebody who we know crept up behind her on his hands and knees, grabbed her around the knees and said, "Mama, Mama, Mama." And of course she beat him with her purse, which only made it worse. And I don't know what the outcome of that story is, but maybe Jean can tell you all later. So now I'm going to stick to the script, because if I don't, Bill always said that he snuck a dead baby into each one of his sets, and if I get a little further off the track here, one might come flying out of the rafters. So I had to think of a couple things that I might direct at Bill, and one was a great opportunity when that Missoulian wanted the best dressed, people to nominate best dressed person. So here's the letter with, I think, 54 signatures. No problem, everybody wanted to sign this letter, so I'm going to read it to you. This is to the Missoulian best dressed. Greetings. In response to your call for nominees for Missoula's best dressed citizen, someone who's on the cutting edge of fashion and furthermore represents many shapes, sizes, and walks of life, we'd like to nominate our colleague Bill Raoul. Bill stands every day at the cutting edge of fashion as head of the costume shop in the drama department at the University of Montana. He not only cuts out fashion for people of many shapes, sizes, and walks of life, he also designs the stuff. Not only professionally but personally, Bill has been making a socially responsible daily fashion statement for as long as any of us can remember by wearing the same blue work shirt and jeans long enough that they should be sent to the Smithsonian. Bill's fashion statement is so respected by his colleagues that on his 50th birthday, which was also so long ago that none of us can remember, the entire School of Fine Arts, dean, faculty, students, and staff dressed exactly like Bill for his hard-to-keep secret party. Do you know of any other business where the entire company so acknowledges the fashion statement of one of its members? In an era of increasing social and environmental consciousness in which we each strive to avoid the traps of our consumer culture, we look to Bill Raoul as the best example of simplicity in making a fashion statement. Sincerely, all of the above. I have one other letter I wrote on Bill's behalf. In this environment of bureaucratic BS, if I may say, we have to write dozens and dozens of letters of recommendation. So Bill had asked me for a letter of recommendation for a promotion or merit. And so I wrote him a very acceptable and the best possible letter I could. And then I thought, I'm going to write what I'm really thinking. So I paraphrased the good letter and made the mistake of giving him this one, which later he showed me his file, and he had put this copy on a big piece of cardboard with red tape around it in his file and sent it uphill. I thought that would be the end of my days at UM, but anyway. To whom it may concern, I'm writing this letter to acknowledge Bill Raoul's friendship as a colleague in the School of Fine Arts. Bill is one of the most generous people I've ever worked with. He is never too busy to listen, to have a party, or bake a pie. His humor is a legend on the campus and all the way to the Safeway store on West Broadway. He can also think faster than most people, which eliminates a lot of unnecessary competition. It makes for shorter and funnier committee meetings as well. We have laughed a lot, busted a gut actually, on the faculty advisory committee to the deans at various times over the years, and like Ted Parker, hope to survive many administrations. We don't plan to get kicked out like he did, though, because we work harder for less money and we're a lot funnier than he ever was. I survived this. Bill's humor is really funny, and you can always count on it, even though you can't actually write any of what he says in an important letter like this. In addition to getting away with murder with his double entendres on his radio program, he is also quite in demand as a demonstrated lecturer in various universities, high schools, and adult bookstores throughout all of the northwestern states and North Carolina. He is also very supportive of the art department and the secretary. He works overtime with our graduate students, even the slow ones, and sometimes he's an advocate of their work when not even the art faculty has a clue as to what to do with them next. He comes to their art shows even though he doesn't have to, too. No problem, or fuck him, are Bill's most frequent responses to any request. He will go an extra mile or two for anybody, especially if they get him some booze or are good cooks or have fun parties or write letters like this for him. Bill Raoul is just a great guy and really needs this letter of support, especially if he's going to compete with some of the art faculty who are applying for merit this year. They are just as underpaid and overworked as he is, but without a doubt, they can't cook or crack jokes as good. Please give Bill Raoul all the promotions, merits, money, and whatever else he wants. You couldn't do better for the people of Montana, the School of Fine Arts, or all of his friends. Sincerely.
I need you to write my next one. Good. I'd like to invite Udo Fluck up, Director of the UM Office of International Programs, Global Gateway.
I'd like to tell you how Bill Raoul touched my life and the life of my families. And I say families because I have one here and one somewhere else. I was born and raised in Germany and came to UM in 1989 to study broadcast journalism. My minor was in theater, and that is how I met Bill. I would like to share 3 brief stories, one about Bill and my wife, one about Bill and my parents, and one about how Bill touched my life. The first one I call Bill the Baker and Christmas Ornament Giver, even internationally. I met my wife Nancy in 1996 in Germany on vacation, and Christmas 1996 Nancy came to Missoula for the first time, and during her stay met Bill. In 1997, Bill started a wonderful tradition with our family. Every year during Christmas season, he would give us 2 brown bear or black bear ornaments for our Christmas tree. Every ornament displays the year it was given to us, and they are all different. In 1999, my wife and I moved back to Germany for some practical work experience until 2002, when we returned. The years we were gone, we received a Christmas care package from Bill containing our 2 Christmas bear ornaments and something many of you have tasted over the years, a Bill Raoul orange and lemon bundt cake. Bill told me once his Christmas cake production had peaked in the middle of the last decade with over 60 cakes that he sent to many friends domestically and apparently internationally. Today we have over 30 bear ornaments on our tree, and we will continue this tradition the way Bill started it. The next little story is Bill the generous, talented chef and Thanksgiving in June. In the mid-90s, my parents came to visit us in June in Missoula, and during a conversation with my mom and dad, Bill and my parents talked about American holidays, traditions, customs, and Bill explained the significance of Thanksgiving and a traditional Thanksgiving dinner. Knowing that my parents would leave Missoula in the end of June and would not be here in November for Thanksgiving, Bill hosted a traditional Thanksgiving dinner for my family with all the trimmings in June. My parents had never seen, let alone eaten, a cranberry, as they're not farmed in Germany. Bill ordered a traditional country ham from North Carolina, a turkey, and made my first bourbon pecan pie, and we all celebrated Thanksgiving in June. My parents, who have visited with Bill often when they have traveled to Missoula over the years, still talk about that special dinner today. And the last one, Bill the patient motivator. In the last 25 years, Bill was never too busy, never too tired, and never too uninterested to help many of us and to help me specifically with my writing. I asked him to proofread papers, research articles, my thesis, and even my dissertation. In 2003, when I was working on my PhD, Bill was inspiring, motivating, and I'd like to think proud of what we accomplished together. I asked him several times over the years why he invested so much time into something that was not even in his academic area. He simply replied that he liked to learn. I distinctly recall a meeting that I had with a member of my doctoral committee in which the committee member criticized my writing. I don't think I've ever seen Bill angry in the past 2 decades, but in that meeting he came pretty close. He looked at the fellow faculty member and said, "Why don't you try to write something, anything in German, and we can see how far you get." His feedback was always appreciated, not perhaps at the time when he had me rewrite a paragraph 4 or 5 times until it was ideally worded, but it made me a better writer, and I'd like to think a better father and a better person. Bill was incredibly patient and understanding of my weaknesses as a non-native speaker. I can only hope that I can develop this patience for my 3-year-old daughter and my 8-year-old son. Farewell, William Harrison Raoul.
I'd like to invite Arnie Fischbach, Executive Director of the Montana Arts Council, up.
I met Bill back in 1970 when I was a freshman in the theater department, and he was my stagecraft teacher. And we've remained friends for all these 40 years. I love it when you can say, we've been friends longer than we haven't. You know? When I think about Billy Raoul and why I loved him because he closed each lecture in stagecraft with something that he called cocktail chit-chat. I could study music history by going to his house instead of to the university music library. He let us do take-home finals in stagecraft. He was the best teacher I ever had. He was an incredible designer, and his sets always stood up when they went on tour. He made a damn fine cup of coffee. Now, these chocolate chip cookies that everyone is talking about, well, they were called Billy Raoul Oinkers. And he would send us dozens of these cookies when I lived in New York and I worked at the Met. And like every 3 months, a big giant box of cookies would arrive. And my staff would see this return address that said Bill Raoul, Missoula, Montana, and they'd scream out, "The Oinkers are here!" I loved that he succumbed to awe and was speechless when he saw Franco Zeffirelli's La Boheme live at the Met, and he made not one snarky comment the whole night. I love that he wore a tuxedo when he was my date at the Metropolitan Opera's Centennial, and I took this picture, Bill. I love that his dinner parties were full of carbohydrates extraordinaire, not to mention fascinating company. I love that he married Daisy, and he loved her just as much after they got divorced, and he loved Raymond just as much too. Daisy's not so new husband. But Raymond, I'm sorry, I didn't know what else to say. I love that he had Jan Holmes in his life, which led to so many sublime musical moments at his home and on the air. I love that he introduced so many creative ways to use invectives. His approval could make you feel like you were the most important person in the world. As we talked about before tonight, he was painfully candid and honest, and he was one of my most loyal friends. No matter what the stage of his life, no matter what joys or what trials were facing him that day, the thing I loved most about Bill was that he lived life fully. And what a gift we've received from Bill. His life lived fully with us.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Dale Raoul.
Oh, thank you, Mike. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Arn, for the handkerchief. Bill and I got married in 1971 when he was 30 and I was 20. Neither of us had any idea what we were doing. Maybe I had to marry him to pass stagecraft. For a long time, I thought it was the worst mistake I ever made, but actually, it turned out to be one of the best things that ever happened to me. I am so fortunate that Bill and my dear husband of 28 years, Ray, became fast and loving friends. I called Bill my husband. Bill and my mother, who lived here in Missoula, were also very close, and she referred to him as her son outlaw. When she became ill and had to go into a nursing home, he went to see her every day. He would take cookies to the staff and talk dirty to the nurses and get them all laughing hysterically. And because of that, my mother got much better care. Now, everyone has talked about Bill's eccentricities, and it was ever thus. After we got married, we moved to California. We had no car, no phone, no TV, and no washer or dryer. So I would ride my bicycle to the nearest phone booth. I would call a taxi to take me to the laundromat, and I would then bike home to get the laundry and meet the taxi, and then go in the taxi to the laundromat to do the laundry. Then I would have to call the taxi to come and get me and take me home. And somehow Bill thought this was fine, but but he did quickly relent, and life got a little easier after that. As you know, he could be very direct. We had a lot of parties in the old days, and when he would get sleepy, he would stand up and say, "Dalesy, let's go to bed. These people want to go home." And theater directors often found him very annoying. His first week at Cal State Fullerton, he was seeing a production directed by the chairman. And Bill said to this chairman at intermission, "Wow, if I'd known the show was this long, I'd have packed a lunch." And he was also, as everyone has said, publicly provocative, and many people were offended by him. He was once banned from Costco for 2 months. And now, forgive what I'm about to say, this isn't very ladylike, but it was very Bill. This woman ahead of him in line had a big Polish sausage in her cart. And he said to her, "Madam, I think you forgot to get the condoms for that thing." So this woman was very offended and got the manager over, and even though he was laughing, and he told Bill that perhaps he should stay away for a while. But enough words about his cranky, crabby, sarcastic, naughty self. To me, he was never anything but loving without hesitation. He was really quite romantic, actually, and very soft-hearted. I was thinking today, and I was trying to remember if I could even think of a time whenever he got angry with me, and I actually couldn't remember ever a single time. He always waited on me. He got me a big, slobbering St. Bernard who sat on people and drooled, and one time ate the whole Thanksgiving turkey. He bought Ray and me puppies, and he drove them to California as a surprise. And when Ray and I had a lot of earthquake damage in the 1994 earthquake in California, Bill drove down and painted our house, which was, we thought, true love. He taught me how to make a good egg custard. He taught me about music and humor and how to set a dining table with a butler's yardstick. He taught me, maybe not wisely, but he taught me not to be afraid of money. And I'm sure Ray wishes he hadn't. He also taught me how to appreciate the outrageous. And I will hear his voice in my head always. I want to thank you all for being here. Bill would have pretended to be annoyed, but actually he would have been very surprised and quite pleased. And I want to thank Mike for producing this evening. And also, thank you to everybody who's already donated to the Mansfield Library to continue the care and cataloging of Bill's music library. That was the one thing that he was worried about, and it made him sad that the budget got cut. But now I think we will be well on our way to having the cataloging done, and everyone can go and enjoy the music as he did. Now in a minute, please, let's all get together out in the lobby and enjoy some refreshments. But first, I thought we should send Bill off with a great flourish. In the theater, when you do a good job, you get a standing ovation. So please, everybody stand up and let's say thank you.
Thank you. We'll see you in the lobby.
Yeah.